Hi everyone, and welcome to Cooking with Cricket. The other night on one of my videos, when I showed what all I was having for supper, I had my homemade biscuits, and one of my subscribers asked could I do a video on how I make my homemade biscuits. I have an older video. It's about 2 years old when I first started making cooking videos, and I go back and kind of laugh at them now because I would talk real slow and everything. It was crazy. But anyway, I wanted to show you this first. My Richard's grandmother, we call her Great Gram. As kids, we all just call her Great Gram. She's 95 years old, and she's not doing too good. So 20 years ago, well, I love her to death. She's one of the nicest, sweetest people that I've ever met. She is awesome. She's always happy. Like, even instead, when we lived in Alabama and they would come up and visit, you know, when all the kids would be dancing around and being loud and stuff, you know, instead of her even asking them to be quiet, she'd be up there dancing with them. And she's awesome. So 20 years ago, when we moved into this home, when we moved back from Alabama, she gave me this, a wooden rolling pin, this pastry cutter, and this flour sack. Well, not flour sack, it's a like a bread rolling cloth. She gave me this, and it had a note attached that said, "Make me some biscuits. Roll me some biscuits, please." So I used to use it a lot, as you can tell with this handle. But now, every now and then I might use it some. But now I just kind of want to cherish it because it's something special to me. So anyway, let's get cooking. Now, these measurements aren't really exact or anything, but tonight I'm going to have homemade biscuits to go with my supper. But instead of cooking up a whole pan and them not all getting eaten, and usually now with the way everybody works, it's pretty much we're not always here to sit down together for a meal. So I'm just going to set aside what I'm going to make for us tonight, and then I'm going to freeze the rest. So I'm going to start off with roughly 2.5 cups of self-rising flour. Like I say, it doesn't have to be exact. Now I'm going to sift my flour. Now I always keep my flour and cornmeal in my freezer. That's just something I've always done. I heard about weevils or something getting in it, and even one morning I was watching a talk show, and she said to at least put it in your freezer for about 24 hours to kill any little thing that might be in there. And I know that sounds gross, but that's just, I just keep mine in the freezer. Anyway, I have my flour sifted. I'm going to take out about a half cup. Now, I have roughly 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of solid vegetable shortening. These are not at room temperature or anything. They're still firm. And it's not exact measurements either. You can go a little over. You can use all butter, or you can use all vegetable shortening, but I just use a mixture of both. And you could either use your pastry blender, but I just use a fork. We want to mix this up and get our butter and all till it's about the size of peas. Just as you're mixing it, you know, give it a good stir or shake, and the bigger pieces will come to the top. And actually, you can make your biscuits ahead of time. A lot when my kids were little, like when they would take a nap, I would go ahead and make my biscuits up and put them on my greased cookie sheet, cover them up with foil, put them in the refrigerator until I got ready to cook them that night. And then I could clean up the mess. Alright, now we need to mix in our milk. You can use milk, buttermilk. I've seen some people use whipping cream. But normally we don't drink buttermilk, so I rarely buy any because I don't want it to go to waste. So in your baking section you can buy dry buttermilk, and that's usually what I get. Keep it in the refrigerator. And so I've took a cup of water and 4 tablespoons of the dry buttermilk and just mixed it up. So like I say, I'm starting out with a cup. I may use it all, I may not. It depends on the weather and the humidity. So I've added about a half of the cup. I'm going to need some more. You want your dough to be good and moist, but not too moist, if that makes sense. You don't want it to be real dry. Okay, just a little bit more. And if you get your dough too wet, just add a little bit of your reserve flour. Alright, that looks good. Let's put you up here so you can kind of see the consistency. It's going to really stick to my fingers, but it's not real too wet. Now, sometimes when I make biscuits, I just roll them out with my hand. I flour my hands real good. Just get me a scoop and just roll them like that and put it in my pan and lightly tap them down. But today I'm going to roll them out. So even though my hands were good and clean, I'm going to go wash them real good again and scrub up under my nails again and get my table ready, and I'll be back. And see, I still just have just under 1/4 of a cup left, and some days it takes it all. So a good way to start is just by adding a cup. I'll be back. Alright, what I did, I just laid down some plastic wrap to roll my biscuits on. But if you don't have any biscuit or cookie cutters, you can always use a glass. I found this whole set for $1 at a thrift store. It's got all different sizes in it. So you can just make them any size. So I'm going to lay out some flour. Now I'm not going to use a rolling pin. I'm just going to use my hands. Just flour them up, sprinkle a little on top. Just give my dough a few little turns. See, it's real sticky. But really, that's kind of how you want it to have a good moist biscuit. Just give it a couple of turns. Keep flouring my hands. And now just make it, pat it out to the thickness that you like. There I have mine. Not quite a 1/2 inch, but just about. And I always start from the outside and go in. I go straight down and I just kind of, just gently twist just a little bit, and usually that first biscuit's hard to come out, and then I just kind of get off the excess flour. And this is what I'm having for supper tonight, so I'm putting it, I always line my pans with foil, the dull side up, and grease it real good, and just lay your biscuits, and they can touch each other. just gently, I just kind of toss it back and forth. And I'm just going to cook four for supper tonight. So I have them in my pan. Now, I'm not ready to start cooking supper, so I'm going to cover this with foil, put it in my refrigerator. And then when I get ready to cook them, I'm going to take them out, uncover them, and preheat my oven to 425 degrees. And cook them until they're lightly brown on the top. If they get real brown on the bottom before they start browning on the top, you can put them in the broiler. And now for the ones that I'm going to freeze, I don't have my cookie sheet greased or nothing. I just have a piece of foil down. And we'll start laying them. You don't want them to touch in now because we're going to flash freeze them. So when we put them in our bag, freezer bag, they won't stick to each other. So when you get it ready to make some more, just kind of bring your dough back together. You don't really want to work it too much. Pat it back out some. And keep making more. And this, I may just have to roll by hand. This is how, if I wasn't rolling it out, I would just dip my hands in flour, and I would dip my hands in flour, get me out some, roll it around in my reserved flour, and roll it like this. And just put it in my pan that way. So these are going in the freezer for about an hour, just like this. And I'll be back when I take them out of the freezer. Alright, my biscuits have been in the freezer for about an hour. So on my freezer bag, I've got written what it is, biscuits, the date that I put it in there, and what to bake it at. So, if anybody's warming up their meal and would like a homemade biscuit, just put, you know, how many you want onto a greased cookie sheet, preheat the oven to 425, and then pop them in the oven. You can pop them straight into the oven, frozen, or usually what I do is put it in my greased cookie sheet and then let it set out for about 15 or 20 minutes. Let the oven heat up, and then when my dinner about gets done, pop it in the oven. But see, now they're froze, so they won't stick together when I put them in the bag. Now, I don't know how long these will keep. You know, maybe about a month or two, but these won't last very long. So just make sure you get all the air out of it and pop them back in the freezer. And my biscuits are done. See, lightly browned on the top, perfectly browned on the bottom. You could even brush them with melted butter if you wanted to. And also, if you wanted to make cheese biscuits, when you get your butter and vegetable shortening mixed in before you add the liquid, add in some shredded cheese and you can have cheese biscuits. But let me warn you, make sure you do line your pan real good and grease it real good, because they do stick a lot. So anyway, I hope you enjoy.